For weight loss, stop mixing carbohydrates with fats in every meal that you eat. This makes a really big impact on fat loss for a couple of reasons, but first and foremost, when we eat carbohydrates, especially ones that rank high on the glycemic index chart, our insulin production increases, and when insulin production increases, our body goes into an energy storing mode as opposed to an energy burning mode. Because one of the main jobs of insulin is to open up our cell walls to allow for nutrient absorption. But the problem is, if you now introduce fat with it, then the cell is going to take both the sugar and the fat. And because your body probably isn't burning a ton of energy at that time to begin with, all of that fat that's going into your cell is more likely than not going to get stored as fat, and the chances for it to get burned for energy are very, very slim. Furthermore, the mitochondria of every cell is essentially what's responsible for the fat burning processes, the conversion of fat into energy. So having the mitochondria work at its most efficient is really, really important for fat burning. And recently, scientific literature has proven that the mitochondria functions at its most efficient when its fuel source is only coming from one source, whether it be carbohydrates or fat, but not a combination of both. So what does that mean? It just means that when you're eating meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, every meal should basically be carbohydrate or fat dominant with a sufficient amount of protein. And that doesn't also mean that just because you're eating a meal, if something is 20 grams of carbohydrates and like 2 grams of fat, it's not the end of the world. You just want to become more conscious as to how often you're combining carbohydrates with fat. The more you can separate carbohydrates from fat, the more time your body is going to be in a state where it can burn off energy as opposed to storing energy. And again, it's not that carbs are bad, it's just that they should be timed differently than fats. The glycemic index is a really helpful chart that ranks carbohydrates on a scale from 0 to 100, 100 making it so the carbohydrate impacts blood glucose a lot heavier than something that ranks lower on the glycemic index chart. You know, when you're thinking about mixing carbs and fat, if you're mixing a carb like pasta that ranks really, really high on the glycemic index chart with a fat, you're gonna store more fat as opposed to eating a carbohydrate like maybe a banana that has a lower glycemic index ranking with a fat. Granted, at the end of the day, both are still not ideal, but glycemic index ranking definitely has an impact on carbs when you're eating carbs with fat. But my biggest recommendation is to try to just avoid eating carbs with fat altogether. That'll keep your body in a really good state for being able to burn fat. And I would say that there should be a 3 to 4 hour period between meals. So if you are going from a fat dominant meal to a carbohydrate dominant meal, I would give your body at the very least a full digestive period, like 3 to 4 hours before consuming that next meal, just to ensure that there's no carryover effect from, carbohydrates from one meal and then fat in the other meal. But give this a shot and follow it religiously because it's made a really big difference on how my body stores fat. I've coached a number of clients through this diet that have seen, pretty big body transformations from following this way of eating. You can combine other, proven methods of fat loss in conjunction with this way of eating, like intermittent fasting. So, having an 8-hour period where all of your meals are structured within 8 hours and they're still following the fat dominant, and carbohydrate dominant meal structure. It's just another tool that you can use to help propel fat loss. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys for today. If you did find the video helpful, give me a thumbs up. If there's anything that I didn't cover that you need clarification on, please let me know and I will respond as quick as possible. Thanks.